The smell of roasted chicken wafted through our cozy dining room, mingling with the scent of fresh rosemary and garlic. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow that made the wooden table gleam. My heart raced as I sat there, staring at the lavish spread my mother had prepared for our family dinner, a feast fit for royalty in our quaint little home. I could almost hear the laughter and chatter of the past, echoing from memories long gone, yet tonight felt different, heavy with unspoken tension. It was my brother's birthday, but his joy felt like an afterthought, overshadowed by the secrets lurking beneath our carefully curated facade. Happy birthday, dear brother, I forced a cheerful tone, trying to match the excitement on my mother's face as she gently placed a slice of cake in front of him. You have no idea how much you deserve this day. He grinned, clearly loving the spotlight. Fun should have surrounded him, but I could tell he was oblivious to the brewing storm. My sister, always the peacemaker, clapped her hands. Let us make a toast to my brother. May your year ahead be filled with success and happiness. Her eyes sparkled, and I wanted to feel happy to join in their merriment, but it was like standing on shifting sand. One wrong move, and everything would collapse. My mother raised her glass, her smile radiant, but I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes as she glanced at me. Amelia, dear, would you like to say something? My chest tightened. It felt like being thrust into the spotlight at a talent show when I had barely rehearsed. As I looked down at the table, my fingers brushed against the soft linen tablecloth, the fabric inviting yet suffocating. Sure, happy birthday to you, I stammered, forcing the words out. Thanks for always being there for us. The sincerity in my tone felt overshadowed by something darker, unacknowledged. I could see my brother's eyes darting to my mother, seeking approval. Thanks, sis, you're always so thoughtful. He smirked, taking a big bite of cake, clearly unfazed. I wished I could join him in that carefree existence, but I felt my pulse quickening, the weight of what was unsaid pressing down on me like a thick fog. As the dinner progressed, the silence spoke louder than any celebration could. I noticed how my father had been unusually quiet. He only grunted in acknowledgement as he shredded the chicken, his eyes cast downward. My mother, ever the image of grace, tried her best to fill the void with small talk about trivial things, but I could see the tension building. The peaceful ambience transformed into something electric, charged with lots of unsaid anger simmering beneath the surface. Is that your phone buzzing, Amelia? My mother asked, breaking the silence, and I felt my heart sink momentarily. I could not help but think of that letter I had found earlier. I held my breath as I forced a smile, shaking my head. No, it is just my imagination, mother, I replied, my voice steady even when I felt like the ground might give way. Okay, but I swear that phone is glued to your hand, she laughed lightly, but her eyes betrayed her concern. Just like your brother and his video games. My brother snorted, his mouth full of mashed potatoes. Well, at least I have a hobby, he shot back, his irritation flaring. What about you, Amelia, still looking for your passion? I felt my cheeks flush, the heat of embarrassment filling my face. I have my art, you know that, I shot back defensively, wishing I could wipe that grin off his face for even a moment. It was the same response every time, dismissed and belittled, but variations on a theme. Art is nice and all, but it is not going to pay the bills, my father interjected finally, his voice stern and unforgiving. I saw my mother wince at his words. You should really think ahead, dear. It's always about the money, isn't it? I snapped, the words flowing out before I could stop myself. You think just because my brother has his head in the clouds, you'll throw him the keys to the family business? I am your daughter, too. The room fell silent, thick with palpable tension. Amelia, we are trying to celebrate here, my sister pleaded, her eyes wide with fright. You do not need to ruin this night. I could feel my throat constricting as tears threatened to spill. I am not trying to ruin anything, I just want to be seen. My mother opened her mouth as if to speak, but moments of hesitation made her look softer and much older. We all see you, Amelia, she said gently. But your father is right, you need to choose a viable path for your future. The pain in her voice gnawed at my insides, her words sending waves of indignation crashing through me. Choosing a path, that is exactly the problem. You keep talking about viable paths while I have sacrificed everything to do what you wanted. I felt my shoulders sag, the golden brown warmth of the soft light growing cold. I wanted to pursue art in college, but you wanted me to take over the family estate. Don't pretend this is a surprise, I raged, frustration boiling inside me. My brother's eyes aimed a piercing look at me. And what about the inheritance? Do you think mom will just pass everything down to you if you refuse to help? My father's voice cut sharp through the heavy air. You think this is all a game? His tone was low, menacing. This isn't about the money, this is about family. We made sacrifices to keep this house, you need to understand that. Sacrifices? What sacrifices? Was it the $150,000 you spent on your new car while I'm struggling to pay off one semester? My own frustration exploded into fury, every word edging on the knife's edge. I could see my father's jaw tighten. It was as if I had struck a nerve deep within him, and there it was, the chip on my shoulder I couldn't drop, fueled by everything simmering beneath my skin for years. Amelia, that car was a gift and investment, he barked, but his voice had started to tremble. I felt a shift in the atmosphere, the air turned thick with a caustic mix of fear and anger as it clawed at my defenses, and suddenly my mother's face looked older, deep lines etched around her eyes that hadn't been there moments before. An investment? You mean an obligation? I shot back. You chose a brand new car over the potential future of your own daughter. You think you made me feel valued, but you cut me off. My heart felt like it would burst, a roiling storm surging through my chest. I could barely breathe past the weight of years of being pushed aside in favor of my brother's successes. My sister's voice trembled as she interjected, "Can we not do this here? It is a day of celebration." She sounded almost pleading, and I fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. "Celebration?" I echoed, my voice cracking. "Do you mean to celebrate this broken family?" My mother's face paled, and I could feel a sense of dread rise like a tide in the room. It was as if everyone froze, caught in a web of my anger and hurt. The rich colors of the sunset outside dimmed, draping us in shadows as I realized the ugly truth that loomed overhead. "I cannot pretend not anymore," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I deserve better," my brother scoffed. "Better? You really think you have it worse than us? Try to put yourself in our shoes, Amelia." Yet even his words, which used to have weight, felt coated in sarcasm, an echo of the disconnect that had stretched like a taut rope between us all. I wanted to scream that I had always been sidelined in this family drama, and the burden of my emotion quieted into an overwhelming rain cloud. Slowly, the resentment transformed into empowerment, and a small flame ignited within me as I realized I was tired of the narrative. "I deserve to be heard," I stated firmly, taking a deep breath, sensing the astonishment washing over the faces staring at me. "You all have done what you wanted while I stood in the shadows, but I refused to remain hidden." The fear of retribution hung in the air, and I felt a surge of courage rise within me, the weight of years pounding against the walls of my chest like thunder. "You all chose to ignore me over the years because you thought I would stay quiet, but I am done." In that moment, I noticed my grandfather's old clock ticking in the hallway, counting each second of silence that stretched painfully. Fear clutched at my heart, but I knew the battle had only just begun. Just as I stood up from the table, preparing to confront whatever fallout awaited me, the doorbell rang unexpectedly, echoing through the room like an ominous toll. My family exchanged confused glances, surprise mingling with curiosity. Who could that be at this hour? My mother wondered aloud, her eyebrows furrowing. I could feel a new wave of anxiety bubbling in my stomach, a distraction, a herald of more chaos. "Let me get that," my sister offered, her voice wavering. As she left the dining room, I felt a mixture of dread and anticipation at what was about to transpire. The atmosphere had shifted yet again, and it felt as if the world had tilted off its axis. I could not shake off the feeling that whatever lay on the other side of that door could shatter everything we had left. I stepped into the dimly lit living room, clutching the paper tightly in my hands. The scent of burnt toast hung in the air. My mother had probably been trying to prepare breakfast before the family meeting. If her flustered demeanor was any indication, the morning was not off to a good start. The sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, creating a warm glow that laced the room but did little to lift the heavy atmosphere that pressed down on me. My sister paced across the room, her footsteps sharp against the wooden floor, while my father leaned against the fireplace, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Just the sight of him made my stomach churn. "Amelia, are you going to just stand there? You know what this is about," my father said, his voice cold and dismissive. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding as I stepped deeper into the room. The tension wrapped around us like an elastic band, stretching thinner by the moment any sudden move could snap it. "I know, father," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady even though inside I felt like I was spiraling. This family meeting wasn't the usual catch-up, it was about our late grandfather's inheritance, something I had become the unwilling focus of. "You know we deserve a fair share too," my sister added, her voice laced with irritation, but her eyes darted back to my father for approval. "Fair share, what a joke," I thought bitterly. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, trying to filter out the noise. When I opened them, I caught sight of the letter I had discovered just last night, my grandfather's handwritten note, tucked away in an old box in the attic, addressed to me but never delivered. I had read it over and over again, the words fixed in my mind like an unshakable truth. "Amelia, we need to talk about how unfair this whole situation is." My sister's voice pulled me from my thoughts, her frustration evident as she paced faster. "You were favored as usual just because you are the eldest granddaughter. That's not fair, you know I never asked for any of this," I shot back, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. My distress quickly morphed into defiance, the old feelings of being dismissed bubbling just beneath the surface. "You are the favorite, and we all know it," my sister screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "I was there when you got that expensive car for your birthday, you got the most money for college, they chose you over us, and I am tired of it." "Mother, you have to say something." My sister turned to our mother, who had been quietly standing by the doorway, her face pale and apprehensive. "You need to back me up. I do not want to get involved in this mess," my mother replied softly, her eyes drifting to the floor. "This is not just about money, Amelia." The room went quiet, and for a second I feared the calm would shatter. "Not just about money?" I questioned angrily, feeling the heat rise in me. "Grandpa's estate is worth over $500,000. How can this not be about money?" That got my sister's eyes flashing with realization, the fire instantly igniting once again. "Exactly, you never had to worry about money because you were always looked after. It is sickening, you received everything. You think I want this? You think this is what I wanted for my life?" My voice cracked as I struggled to hold back the storms of emotions crashing within me. "I don't want the inheritance, I just wanted my grandfather to be here. You knew it was going to happen." My sister spat, crossing her arms defiantly across her chest, as if shielding herself from my words. "You always knew, that's why you are pushing for this family meeting. You are prepared to take everything just like you always do." I felt my chest tighten as if an invisible weight pressed down on me. In that moment, I wished more than anything for the old days, the time when family dinners were filled with laughter, not accusations. I could hardly bear looking at my father. His eyes were narrowed, calculated as he processed the entire scene. He had never been one for emotional outbursts. Amelia, this family meeting isn't about blame, he finally said, his voice even as always but dripping with condescension. It's about what is rightfully the family's. What is rightfully the family's is what you chose, father, I retorted, a flicker of courage igniting. He went pale, and for a fleeting moment I thought I detected an inkling of fear behind his composed facade. Do not twist my words, he replied, his fists tightening around his arms. I would have loved to take a step back to reframe my approach, but anger propelled me forward. You chose favorites, you cut me off. This inheritance, this is just another fee you extracted from our grandfather for favoring me. You see it as a win, but I see it as a betrayal. I wished I could erase the simmering resentment, but it lingered in the air like a bad smell. And then there it was, the topic that had haunted every family gathering since my grandfather's passing, the house. I mentally braced myself for the verbal volley to come. You think this is about favoritism, that everything revolves around you? My father challenged, his voice rising, filled with the weight of his authority. You may be the one who holds that letter, but that does not mean you deserve anything more than we do. Doesn't it? I replied, my emotions now a swirling mess. You have what you want, I have what nothing. A secret letter means nothing when everything else is stacked against me. My father shifted, the tension in the room palpable. The wall clock ticking ominously reminded me of how slowly the moments crawled when anxiety hung in the air. I locked eyes with my sister, and for the first time I saw a flicker of vulnerability beneath her anger. Do you really think that we shouldn't have divided this differently, instead of giving you everything as if you are the only one worthy? She asked, her tone now softer but questioning, probing through the facade of anger and hurt. I hesitated, unsure how to articulate the truth that had nagged at me from the very start. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, my heart racing. Maybe not everything was fair, but it shouldn't be the basis of how we treat each other now. My mother finally stepped out of her corner, her eyes glistening as she approached me. Amelia, you are not alone in this. We need to work together. This family means more than money and greed. Her voice was steady yet wavering, pulling at my heartstrings. Why should I trust anyone when honored traditions have been overtaken by betrayal? I shouted back, gripping the letter tighter. Just as I was about to peel back the layers of my grandmother's words, my mother's phone buzzed aggressively on the table, breaking through the tension like an unwelcome guest. I am not going to answer that right now, she said, but the insistent buzzing persisted. Frustrated, she snatched it and glanced at the screen. What? She almost hissed. My sister stopped pacing, her brows knit together as her eyes flicked between our mother and me, uncertainty layering over her anger. The peaceful room morphed into a battleground where ultimatums were the only currency. Amelia, please, my mother urged, holding her palm up as if defending herself from accusations. It was strange to feel sympathy for her. I had often been so enraged by my entire family that I forgot she was a victim too. Please do not let us end this over money. My father meant for this to bring us together. Together? I scoffed, incredulous. You have seen how this plays out. Together means I lose because everyone else counts. I do not even know if I am part of this family when it feels like I walked into a lion's den. Silence fell again, thick and heavy. I turned my gaze to the fireplace where the flames crackled softly, almost mocking me. Everything about this moment felt surreal, as if I was an outsider looking in. Just as the weight of the world threatened to crush me, my father's voice cut through the thick fog of despair. We can't do this now. Not in front of everyone. I glanced at my mother, her eyes pleading for peace. It struck me then, what if I could hold the power? What if my sister's anger and my father's calloused love weren't the only cards on the table? What if I could protect my grandfather's legacy rather than allow it to become a prize fought over by the living? I forced my features into an expression of resolve, pushing my fears down like a heavy stone in a riverbed. If we cannot reconcile, then I will take the letter. I will make sure everyone knows what our grandfather truly wanted. I will not let you twist his words. The stun that swept through the room was palpable, and I could hear a pin drop. My father's eyes widened, disbelief playing out across his face, while my mother reeled back, looking lost. You wouldn't dare, my father whispered, ice creeping back into his voice. Try me, I said, feeling the rush of empowerment surge through my veins, momentarily drowning out the fear. As my defiance hung in the air, an audible gasp echoed off the walls, my sister's eyes wide and shocked, disbelief crackling just as tangible as the flames. I could feel the future stretching before me, uncertain but exhilarating. For the first time, I had a voice. The stakes had been raised, and we were in uncharted territory, dangerous but exhilaratingly mine to control. As I stood there, waiting for their inevitable responses, I felt more alive than I had in weeks. The chaos that had been simmering was just heating up. If they wanted war, I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. There in that room with the sun pouring through the windows yet the shadows growing longer, the battle began, and I was right in the center, determined to reclaim not just my voice but the very essence of my grandfather's legacy. I stood in the living room, feeling the weight of all the upcoming family members gathering in our house for dinner. My heart thudded in my chest as I glanced toward the dining room table, which was meticulously set with our mother's best china and silverware that had belonged to her mother. The centerpiece was an extravagant arrangement of roses, pink and white, adding a sweet scent to the air. The cozy atmosphere, however, only amplified my unease. All I could think about was the hidden tension boiling beneath the surface. The anticipation of the evening was palpable, nearly suffocating. Amelia, can you help me with the drinks? My mother called, snapping me from my thoughts. She stood in the kitchen, her hair tied back and her hands busy preparing trays of appetizers. I could see the worry lines on her forehead, and I wondered if she felt the same unease I did. Sure, mother, I replied, forcing a smile. I headed for the refrigerator, the cool air hitting my face as I pulled out bottles of sparkling water and juice. My gaze drifted to the large wooden cupboard where our family's cherished memories seemed to be locked away. I had always favored the apple pie recipe my grandmother passed down as it tasted of nostalgia and love, yet the bitterness of the current situation overshadowed those warm memories. As I approached the countertop to arrange the drinks onto a tray, I heard my brother's voice drift from the living room. Why do we need to go through this every single time? It was laced with annoyance. It's been 3 months since she passed. Those words struck me. My throat tightened and my hands trembled slightly as I heard our brother's blatant disdain for the impending discussion about our grandmother's will. We need closure or we'll just be left hanging in this nightmare forever, my father chimed in, his voice gravely serious. I placed the drinks onto the tray and made my way into the living room, trying to steady my heart. The air felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved issues. My sister was already sitting on the couch, glaring at our brother with an expression that screamed frustration. It is not just a matter of money, it is about family, she insisted, glancing pointedly at me. I could hardly believe that this was my family. How did we get here? Each word they exchanged was like a sharp blade cutting deeper into the wounds of betrayal. Family doesn't abandon each other for a little stack of cash, my sister snapped as her voice rose with emotion. Cash. You mean the whopping $150,000 in the house? My brother shot back, throwing his hands up in the air with exasperation. Not the money, my sister insisted. It was our home, it was everything to Grandma, and you act like it's just another asset to be divided. It was her everything, yes, but we can't just ignore the fact that it needs to be handled or risk losing it all, my brother argued. The anger flashing in his hazel eyes made me recoil. I stepped further into the room, trying to catch their attention before it spiraled out of control. Guys, can we just sit down and talk about this without yelling? It's not doing any of us any good. As my words hung in the air, my father entered, his expression stern, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. This is not the time or the place for infighting, we need to focus. He took a deep breath and gestured for everyone to settle. Today, I want us to discuss Grandma's will. It is what she wanted, and it is our responsibility to honor her wishes. I felt my heart pound as I watched him begin to read from a crinkled piece of paper that seemed older than I was. The will had been a source of contention for weeks now. Our grandmother's wishes were unclear, and her practicality often went hand in hand with her deep-rooted sentimentality. He cleared his throat, and I strained to hear his words. To my beloved family. It is my wish that my estate be divided equally among my children and grandchildren. The tension hung thick as he continued, but provisions must be made regarding the family home in Willow Creek. Of course we have to keep the house, my sister interrupted, her eyes wide. Grandma would have never let it go, it's a part of us. I don't see the point in keeping a home filled with memories that will only hurt us, my brother muttered, his voice low and defiant. The memories are all we even have left of her, or do you just want to forget it all? My sister's voice cracked, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. And what about the rest of us? My father's voice boomed. Or is it only about what makes you feel good? His words hung there like a curse. I could see my brother's chest tighten in anger, his face going pale. What are you trying to say? He asked slowly, barely managing to keep his cool. Just that we are all hurting, but we're not addressing the real issue here, my father replied sharply, his eyes narrowing. Amelia, you're uncharacteristically quiet. What do you think? I froze. All eyes were suddenly on me, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. My voice caught in my throat as I struggled to muster my thoughts. Inheritances are never easy, especially if we don't communicate well, I managed. But I don't want us to turn against one another. We need to remember why we're here. Nice speech, my brother sneered. But how exactly do you suggest we accomplish that? Squeeze out a few tears and hug it out? My heart sank at his words. Was he really dismissing everything I felt at that moment? I just want us to stick together, I exclaimed, my hands shaking. I can't bear the thought of losing you all over some money when we could be supporting each other instead. Amelia, nobody said it had to come to that, my father said gently, trying to diffuse the tension, but his well-meaning tone abruptly turned defensive as soon as he saw my brother's expression. This is about finding a way to keep the family legacy alive. It requires sacrifice sometimes. I won't sacrifice my sanity for a pile of bricks and a mortgage, my brother shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. With that, he slammed his fist onto the table, rattling everything on it. I refuse to let her memory be a chain that binds me. This place represents rejection. I am done. The silence that followed was deafening. My sister's face was a mix of disbelief and anger, while my father's expression softened in genuine confusion, as if he didn't understand how we spiraled from family togetherness to this explosive state. You see, my sister stepped toward him, her voice trembling with intensity. You're throwing away everything. Grandma loved us. Maybe. Maybe it is hard to see it right now, but we owe her for the years we spent standing as a family together. Not everyone views memories as treasures, my brother exclaimed, turning away. Defeated, he crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, refusing to acknowledge the pain he must have felt. In that moment, I felt all my emotions crash onto me like waves. I could hardly bear to look at him, a mix of pity and anguish washing over me. I cleared my throat, gathering my thoughts. I just don't want us to end like this. Grandma wouldn't want us divided. My voice was barely above a whisper, but I hoped it reached their hearts. Amelia's right, my father finally said, breaking the heavy silence. We need to stand as a family, but that doesn't mean we have to destroy ourselves over this. Easy for you to say, my brother scoffed. You are just taking what you want without caring about what it's doing to the rest of us. You could have fought harder for us for Grandma. Me. My father's voice rose defensively. I am trying to keep this family together, but you need to reconsider your actions. We cannot keep blaming each other forever. I let the weight of the moment sink in. The walls of our home seemed to close in on us, the echoes of unresolved bitterness reverberating in every corner. Shivers crept down my spine as I felt the tension tightening even further. The atmosphere shifted again as the doorbell rang, interrupting our rising hostility. My mother peeked in from the kitchen, her eyes scanning the room with concern. I'll get it, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. As she stepped away, I could sense a building urgency in the air. Everything felt like it was teetering on the edge of chaos. I noticed my brother still lingering at the wall, his jaw clenched and hands balled up. My sister's shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, but her eyes remained fierce. Suddenly, the door swung open, revealing the unexpected guest. Hey guys, I need to talk, the newcomer said, clearly noticing the tension thick in the air. I felt my heart drop. Who could this be? My breath caught in my throat as I watched my sister step forward, her expression shifting from anger to confusion. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice barely masking her hesitation. In that instant, I knew things were about to change. Whatever this person had to say could tip the scales for all of us. The room beckoned a new chapter in our fraught family saga, and in my gut, I sensed it would not bring us any closer. The revelations ahead would not only shatter our fragile peace but thrust us further down the path of turmoil, one that I was now more determined than ever to navigate with strength and courage. My heart raced wildly with both anticipation and dread. What would be revealed next? As the door stood ajar, I knew this was just the beginning. I could barely breathe as I stood there in the kitchen, the smell of burnt popcorn filling my nose and the sound of my brother's laughter echoing from the living room. My heart raced with every beat, each one hitting against my ribs like a drum. I felt like I was being suffocated by the weight of everything that was about to happen, and the bitter taste of resentment lingered on my tongue. The house felt too small, too cramped, too filled with memories of a time when there was no betrayal, no whispers of inheritance, and secrets hidden behind smiling faces. Amelia, are you going to join us? My mother's voice cut through my thoughts, smooth like honey but laced with something sharper. I turned, forcing a smile on my face that felt more like a mask than an expression of joy. My parents had invited everyone over for what was supposed to be a simple family dinner, but I knew that it was so much more than that. The air was thick with anticipation, and I wondered how many of us could sense the storm waiting to break. I'll be right there, Mother, I replied, glancing toward the living room where my father was playing a game on his phone, oblivious to the brewing tension. I took a deep breath, the scent of burnt popcorn still lingering, and steeled myself for what was to come. As I made my way to the living room, the laughter continued, but it felt hollow. There was a tension in the air that made my skin crawl, a dangerous undercurrent that I could no longer ignore. Just think how much fun we are going to have tonight, my sister said, her voice bright, but I caught the edge of her excitement, an undertone of something darker. I knew she could feel it too. I plopped onto the couch between my brother and my sister, forcing a grin that likely looked more strained than genuine. Absolutely always a blast with you guys, I said, trying to keep my voice light. My brother shot me a sidelong glance, a knowing glint in his eye. I heard that you and Mother had a little talk earlier about. He let the word hang in the air like a heavy cloud, the unspoken insecurities thick between us. She just wanted to know how I was coping, I said quickly, avoiding his gaze. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was expecting more, a confession of some sort. I had shared my thoughts and fears with all of them over the past few weeks, but this was something much larger than my personal struggles. This was about choices made without me. It will be fine, my sister chimed in, her voice chirpy, but the way her fingers toyed with the hem of her shirt revealed her own unease. Are you sure about that? I don't know if I can handle another one of Father's speeches about responsibility, my brother replied, rolling his eyes. The way he spoke about our father made me wonder if I was the only one who felt like a puppet on strings in this family, performing in a show that was destined to end in disaster. My mother entered the room a moment later, her smile fixed in place, but there was a tension in her shoulders that made me suspect that she was just as aware of the elephant in the room. The clattering of dishes echoed behind her, and my father's footsteps followed closely behind. Dinner is served, come on, everyone. She clapped her hands, a cheerful sound that sounded far too forced. As we settled around the table, I could already feel the dread rolling in my stomach like a heavy stone. My father raised his glass of sparkling grape juice, his eyes glinting with an enthusiasm that seemed at odds with reality. To family, the most important thing we have. To family, we echoed back, but my heart wasn't in it. We were all waiting, holding our breaths as if waiting for a bomb to go off. My sister, ever the bright spark, reached out and touched my hand lightly, and for a moment I thought maybe she could sense my anxiety. So I was thinking, my father began, his voice booming even as the atmosphere around the table felt like it was closing in. It is time we address some important matters. What kind of matters? My brother shot back, his casual tone barely masking the tension in his body. I couldn't help but notice how his fingers drummed against the table, matching the frantic beat of my heart. The kind that can affect our future, my father declared, like a judge declaring a verdict. The estate, the investments, everything. My mother's expression hardened as she glanced at me, the tension visible in the way her mouth flattened. Now is not the time for this. We should enjoy our meal first. No, I think we need to get to the point, my father insisted, his eyes locking onto mine as if he wanted to ensure I understood just how serious this was. We have some news regarding the inheritance. The word hung there, a palpable weight in the air. I felt my stomach drop like a rock. Inheritance, what do you mean? My voice cracked slightly as I tried to keep my composure, but inside I was screaming. The way he was looking at me like I was some small child who couldn't comprehend the gravity of adult decisions ignited an anger within me that I could barely contain. My brother leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Are you talking about the property, the family home? Even he was caught off guard, and I felt an almost tangible shift in the atmosphere, the air thickening with unsaid words and expectations. Yes, I've decided to sell the property, my father said, his voice firm as steel. It has become too much to maintain alone, and with the money from the sale, we can start fresh, invest wisely. Each of you will receive a fair share. A fair share of what? I cut him off without thinking, my heart racing as I felt the disbelief surge through me. You mean the money you think is yours to give away? What happened to keeping our family home in the family? You just expect us to roll over and accept this? My father's expression hardened. Amelia, this is not just about you. This is about securing our future. You need to start understanding that. I understand perfectly well, father, I shot back, my throat tightening. What I don't understand is how you think you can make this decision without consulting any of us. It is our family, not just yours, to dismantle. Stop yelling, Amelia, my sister exclaimed, her voice shaking slightly. We should be discussing this calmly. How can you talk about calm? You're okay with this. Are you really okay with selling the only place that has ever felt like home? I felt my emotions boiling, and I could see my family's faces all scrunch up in varying degrees of disbelief and shock. Your father is a smart man. He's thinking of our future, something we all want. My mother interjected, eyes darting between my father and me like a referee trying to keep the peace. And what do you think our future holds? I challenged, leaning forward, my skin prickling from the fire of frustration simmering within me. Cutting me out, disregarding my opinions like they mean nothing. Is that how you view family? Amelia, you're being dramatic, my brother said, forcing a chuckle that fell flat. You are turning this into something it isn't. Dramatic? I am being realistic, I retorted, my heart pounding in my chest. You are the ones being unfair. The room went silent, tension wrapping around us like a thick fog. Father crossed his arms and stared me down, a heavy silence stretching between us. There is a reason I am doing this. You don't understand everything, Amelia. You still have so much to learn. Learn, I echoed, disbelief coursing through me. Learn what, father? How to pretend everything is fine while you make decisions that could ruin us? I am doing what needs to be done for this family. This is about survival, he said flatly, each word heavy and deliberate. Survival? You think this is survival? You think tearing us apart and selling everything we've ever known is going to save us? My voice cracked, and I could feel tears prickling at my eyes. You don't understand, he snapped back, and there was something frightening in his voice, something sharp. You want to be stuck in the past? You want to be shackled to memories? Fine, Amelia, but I refuse to be. I am moving forward. There will be no more lingering in the past. It's not how life works. I froze at those words, a cold shiver racing down my spine. You can't do this, I whispered, my voice trembling. You cannot play God with our lives. We all deserve to have a say. The clattering of plates and utensils suddenly felt overwhelming as silence wrapped around the table, a silence more deafening than the loudest crescendo. I stole a glance at my brother, who now sat with his arms crossed, uncertainty dancing in his eyes. My sister's expression had shifted to one of guilt, her brows knitted with worry, while my mother's posture grew tense, her lips pressed tight. That is not your decision to make, my father said slowly, each word cutting deep like a knife. You will accept this. You will learn to accept it whether you like it or not. The money we will gain from the sale will be significant, $50,000 each, as I've calculated. My heart sank at the mention of the money. That was a life-changing sum, but at what cost? Suddenly, I felt weighed down not only by my anger but also by the terrifying realization that this would be the price of my father's authority and the kind of family I was trapped in. $50,000 is nothing in comparison to what we will be losing. The memories, the emotions, I began, but my mother's sharp intake of breath interrupted me. The memories won't pay the bills. The memories won't keep us afloat in this economy, she shot back, her calm demeanor cracking. Then maybe we should reevaluate our priorities, I shouted, the words spilling out like a flood. Don't make me the scapegoat because I refuse to go along with this madness. I'm done arguing, my father said abruptly, his voice a finality that made me feel sick to my stomach. Dinner is over. The word hung in the air like a specter, and my heart sank as he stood up and strode out of the room without a backward glance. He had made his decision. The storm had broken, and I was left there, glued to my chair, disbelief swirling around me. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. My mother's eyes widened with shock, and my sister looked like she might burst into tears. My brother let out a frustrated sigh and ran his hands over his hair. What a night, he muttered, trying to light the mood. What a night, I spat out, shooting him a glare. This is so much more than that. And just like that, everything I had tried to hold together began to crumble. I stood up, my heart racing with a mix of anger and determination. As I marched toward the door, my mind was racing with thoughts of rebellion and the longing for justice. I refused to let them tear our family apart without a fight. As I stepped into the hallway, the muffled sounds of my family fading behind me, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked angry, but more than that, I looked determined. I finally understood that this war was not over, it had only just begun. Against the backdrop of soft whispers and uncertainty, I felt something new boiling within me, a fierce wish for empowerment, a desire to stand my ground. I knew that there were secrets still lurking in the shadows, and I was going to drag them into the light one way or another. It was time I took control of my story and not allow myself to be simply a pawn in someone else's game. With every step, I descended deeper into the belly of the beast, ready to uncover the truth no matter the cost, even if it meant risking everything I had ever known. The drama was only just beginning. And as I reached for the door, the sound of the slamming echoing against the walls brought an unexpected sense of finality. Silence wrapped around me, leaving me with the feeling that my world was now balanced on a knife's edge. I could feel the weight of the decisions ahead pressing down like a storm cloud ready to burst. I would find out every hidden lie, every bitter truth, and I would make them pay for underestimating me. I'm standing in the familiar yet suffocating living room of our family home. The walls, adorned with faded photographs capturing smiles from happier times, seem to close in around me as I prepare for what feels like a fight rather than a family dinner. The air is thick with tension, the kind that clings to your skin and gets caught in your throat. The clock on the wall ticks loudly, each second blaring like a siren as I glance at the dining table set for four. It's almost comical how the silverware gleams under the light, illuminating this strange family atmosphere, but tonight I know it will serve as a stage for the drama that is about to unfold. My father's booming voice fills the house as he welcomes us to dinner with a cheerfulness that feels completely out of place. "Dinner's ready," he calls out, the sound ricocheting off the walls. I cringe internally. I can already picture the jovial smile plastered on his face, the one I used to love seeing, now appearing more like an unsettling mask. I take a deep breath and step into the dining area. My mother and sister are already seated, engaged in a low conversation. My sister's eyes flicker over to me, a mix of surprise and something else I cannot place. I know she feels it too, the simmering tension. I can feel my heart racing under my skin as I pull out a chair and sit down. The smell of roasted chicken wafts through the air, mixing with the savory aroma of garlic mashed potatoes. My stomach grumbles, unaware of the storm brewing around it. "You look well, Amelia," my mother says, her tone excessively sweet, masking a chill underneath. I can detect the underlying note of judgment. "Planning to visit your sister more often now?" The question hangs in the air like an accusation. I can feel my pulse quicken as my palms grow clammy on the table. "Maybe," I reply, forcing a smile. I refuse to let them see me shake. My sister shoots me a sideways glance, her expression unreadable. I know she relishes the power she holds in this family dynamic, sharing whispered moments with our parents while I'm left on the outside. "I heard you got a new job," my father says, his voice booming with pride and a subtle hint of mockery. "How much are they paying you again?" The question seems innocent, but I can feel the challenge behind it. "I'm making $40,000 a year now." I try to keep my voice steady but feel my hands shaking slightly. "That is something," my father smirks, leaning back in his chair as if he's sizing me up. "I guess that's a start. Doesn't quite compare to your sister's scholarship though, right?" My heart sinks, the reminder of my sister's constant achievements feeling like a punch to the gut. "It's not about the money, Dad," I reply, my voice firmer now, desperation bubbling beneath the surface. "At least I'm finally earning my own way." My father brushes it off with a wave of his hand, a dismissive gesture that sends frustration coursing through my veins. "You always had to prove yourself, Amelia. Sometimes you just need to accept that it is what it is." His nonchalance makes my chest tight, my sister's eyes gleam, relishing in my father's mockery. "Of course, Dad," she chimes in, her tone saccharine. "Amelia just loves being the underdog." I can feel my cheeks flush as my brother's laughter rings out, a hollow sound that reminds me of how often I've been called the family disappointment. Sensing the tension rising, my mother tries to step in. "Let's just eat, shall we?" Her attempt to diffuse the situation only emphasizes the rift between us, like she's knowing yet refusing to acknowledge the wounds that lay open on the table. Just as we begin to eat, my brother bursts in, his voice booming. "Hey, everyone, guess what? I think I found Uncle John's old safe in the attic." Excitement bubbles in his tone, but I can't help but feel an impending sense of dread. Memories of the family trust and all the arguments about our inheritance come flooding to mind. "What?" My sister's eyes widen and I can see my mother freeze in horror. "The safe was rumored to hold our family's past, and who knows what secrets were locked within it. You know about that, right?" My brother continues, oblivious to the dark cloud approaching. "It has to be worth like a fortune, probably a few grand." My heart races anew. A few grand, the very thought burns inside me, money that my family believes should be theirs and not a penny for me. "Enough about that, Kyle," my father interrupts, his tone sharp. "You shouldn't go digging into family matters you know nothing about." I feel a flicker of defiant anger. "Why not?" I demand, letting my voice rise in volume. "What are you all so afraid of? Is it because you want to keep everything for yourselves?" My challenge hangs in the air like an exposed nerve. Silence envelops the table. My mother's eyes flash with what looks like anger mixed with fear as she shifts in her seat, her fork clattering against her plate. My father leans forward, his voice low and threatening. "Do not speak that way to your family, Amelia. You are in no position to demand anything." The words hit me like a blow, knocking the wind out of my chest. You mean I'm not in the position because you all cut me off? I retort, my voice shaking but gaining strength with each word. I always had to fight for my place. The way you all act like I owe you anything, like I should be grateful for your scraps. This isn't just about Uncle John's safe, it's about how you treat me. The air thickens with unresolved tension. My sister stares at me, her mouth slightly agape, disbelief written all over her face. My father's face reddens, and I can see how tightly he clenches his jaw. It's like I'm pressing a dangerous button, releasing years of suppressed animosity. Amelia, that's enough. My mother's voice breaks through the tension, sharp and commanding. I lock eyes with her, searching for the mother who used to console me, only to find a stranger staring back. For once, can we just have a peaceful meal? She demands, her attempt to silence me igniting something in my chest. You don't understand the burden of responsibility? Raising my voice, I push back. No, you don't understand the burden of being constantly belittled in my own home. My heart pounds in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through my veins like fire. Just when I think I've had enough, my brother leans in. So what do you want to do about it, Amelia? There's a mocking challenge in his tone and something inside me snaps. What do I want? I repeat incredulously. I want what's fair for once. I want to be heard, my voice cracks, but I refuse to back down. The room falls into a stunned silence. Then my father, his face distorted with anger, stands up suddenly, his chair scraping across the floor, the sound piercing through the thick tension. You don't know what fair is, you never have. The venom in his voice brings tears to my eyes. I blink rapidly, furious at myself for being so weak in front of them. You always favored her, I accuse, my voice trembling with emotion. You chose them over me long ago. My sister's face contorts into one of disbelief, as if she genuinely thought I would forever live in her shadow without resistance. This isn't just about you, she snaps back, her arrogance radiating through the room. You always make it about yourself. I want to scream, to break something, to expose every secret this family has swept under the rug. But you will listen to me? I fire back, my resolve building stronger than the fear that lives in my gut. The fight feels inevitable now. I can see my father's hands trembling with rage, ready to unleash his fury, but I will not bow down. You have no idea what battle I have faced quietly, I shout suddenly, and my voice reverberates against the walls. I am ready to fight for my place, and all of you should know it. My mother's face pales at my determined intensity, the shock reflected in her eyes. My father's nostrils flare, and the atmosphere is electric with unresolved chaos. Just then, my brother speaks up again. What if we go get the safe now? His voice is cautiously playful, but the room has shifted too dramatically for any of us to play along. You aren't serious? My father looks at my brother incredulously, the tension palpable. My sister's eyes narrow, sensing that perhaps my brother is about to cross lines that have been drawn for decades. You can't be serious, she repeats, trying to dismiss the idea, but there is a flicker of interest behind her overly confident demeanor. Unnervingly, I realize that despite the chaos, perhaps this newfound fire could be the answer I have been seeking. Let's go, I say, determination unwavering. I am ready to see what our family legacy truly is. The words hang heavily in the air, the implication of a fight or revelation licking at the edges of each of us. My parents exchange dark looks. They know how this could unravel everything if truths come to light. My sister, still reeling from the unexpected confrontation, seems to ponder whether siding with our parents is worth the risk of discovering the ugly truth. This is nonsense, my mother counters, trying to dismiss the idea, but I can hear her voice tremble. We do not need to look at old belongings like some twisted treasure hunt. Doesn't that depend on what is hidden beneath? I fire back, the anger fueling my resolve. If anything, I won't let this anger stifle me any longer. I want what is mine. My father's eyes narrow dangerously. You will be careful, Amelia. His tone is menacing, and the threat hangs there like a blade poised above my neck, or you will regret it. I feel a cold shiver run down my spine, the weight of his words heavy and ominous, yet the fire inside me burns even brighter. I am done being the quiet one. Let's find that safe, I assert, rising from the table as my heart races, the desire for revenge seeping deep into my bones. The world around me blurs, and as I look back at my family, I know this is just the beginning of a fight that has been brewing for too long. The final confrontation approaches fast, and I am ready to take the first step towards reclaiming what is rightfully mine.